go, another talk. I love this shit. All right, this one's called The Fruits of Life. And it's on the list at AnarchAWAKEning as vegan talk, but it's definitely more than that. It's about basically taking advantage of the gifts that you're given in this world. Nature makes gifts for humans that heal all ailments. Nature makes gifts for humans that basically allow you to thrive in this world. It's just we get tricked into saying no to the gifts and stealing other shit that doesn't belong to us, that doesn't do us or anybody else any good. So my talk is aiming to sort of like repropagate people's just perception so that they can make better decisions and really, you know, get a taste of the fruits of life. You ready? All right, if anybody's still here and you guys want to hear about, you know, how you can cure disease, you can take a seat or you can continue your conversation outside, or you can just continue your conversation while I'm giving the talk. It's fine. I'm sure you won't even pay attention because you still don't know what I'm talking about, but that's fine. We'll edit that part out. But all right, thank you, my friends, for showing up to my, you know, my first gig. It's awesome. So you're basically going to get to hear everything I already tell you anyway. So, you know, that was kind of defeats the purpose of this talk. But I actually want to preface this by talking about how I tried to tell the guy not to say the word vegan. And I did that very intentionally, and he fucked up and he said it. And I mean, the results are clear. And the only people that are here are either vegans or they feel bad for me. That's it. It's one or the other. So that almost kind of like, in a way, kind of like raises a very important issue with the freedom community. Everybody, you know, wants to experience healing and wants to experience, like, you know, this awakening and this meditation and this Zen, but not a lot of people want to like think about, you know, how that ripples out into the world or what else they might be doing that's not so high vibration. So, and I believe that's fairly evident by the fact that everybody, you know, wants to listen to the psychedelic guy talk about ayahuasca, even though we've been listening about ayahuasca for all day now. This is great, it's important, but there's other issues that sort of get blasted to the wayside. So let me touch on ayahuasca, and one of the things I found really interesting listening about it all day. There's they call, I don't know the Spanish word, but it translates to the purge. And there's a whole preparation for this process, because when you drink ayahuasca, you like throw up. There's like all these sorts of like releases that happen. People sweat, people have diarrhea, and then it's mental and emotional too. People have like these issues. And one of the things they do to prepare for it is like this, like sort of like people do like an abstinence diet. So a lot of people won't drink, which I think is a good idea just in general. A lot of people won't eat red meat, and this is recommended to them by the shamans. So instantaneously that rose the question to me, well, what is, if this sacred plant medicine that you all love so much and is giving you this like awakening and this truth is literally going to make you barf all of the red meat you eat and all of the negative stuff that you put into your body, what does that tell you about the connection between yourself and nature if you eat this shit? Like, I know that sounds a little weird, but like, think about it. Like, if nature's plant medicine, Mother Ayahuasca, who teaches everybody about the true nature of spirit, will punish you if you've eaten red meat, what does that say about red meat's, I guess, like disposition within the human anatomy? So that was one thing that really stood out to me. Now, another thing that stands out to me is we did a lot of eye gazing today, and it was one of the most powerful things that I've ever done. I mean, I think it's stronger than psychedelics for anybody who was there. Like, I mean, I laughed, I smiled, I cried. It was crazy. Like, you really did have like a tether to the other being that you were gazing into. And it's just so interesting how we can feel all these emotions from these other humans, and we can feel all these emotions within ourselves, but then when somebody, you know, when our least favorite vegan friend posts a video of, you know, something being like brutally murdered, like it's not a soft process, it's like torture chamber, like it's like some Hannibal shit. Like, if you want to watch a horror movie, don't go to Hollywood. If you want to be scared shitless, then do yourself a favor and just watch slaughterhouse footage, because it's the single most horrifying thing ever. One, because it's scarier than any other movie, and two, because it's real. You know it's not fake. You know that, you know, in the back of your mind somewhere during it, you know that that's just a guy in a clown costume and the kids are fine and they crawl out of the sewer on the other end into the back of the set and everything's okay. But when you're watching that slaughterhouse footage, you see that, oh shit, this is real. Like, the way that thing is shrieking in pain for its life, like, because that's all it can do is call out for help in this fucking torture chamber that it's in. And yet somehow the eye-gazing truth community can't seem to communicate with that being through its eyes. Unless it's their dog, in which case, you know, they can tell you its favorite movie and any other fucking crazy quirk about their animal. So that's another thing that made me a little interesting. Now, the talk was called The Fruits of Life, and I want to stay true to that. I don't want to be pounding everybody with, how we might be like steering off the spiritual path by ignoring this topic. So instead, I'm going to incentivize you to get really excited about this. And the way I'm going to do that is by telling you the story that I went through as far as my own personal transformation. So I was raised on the standard American diet. I grew up in South Philadelphia, cheesesteaks were my go-to meal. I even won a cheesesteak from my coach for doing like a wrestling move that was like really hard to do. That was like an incentive. So I used to eat that stuff all the time. I was no stranger to the carnivorous diet and all that stuff. And then just throughout certain things, like I discovered fasting. I discovered that you didn't need as much food as you thought you did. So that was my first sort of like wake up and like, hey, maybe these like nutritionists don't know shit or don't know what they're talking about. And so I started experimenting with that, and then I started watching films and stuff talking about like sort of like the health repercussions of eating things like eggs and dairy and stuff like that, and how it's like it basically turns to like industrial glue and like inside of your like cells and inside of your capillaries and stuff. And that sort of pissed me off because I'm like, oh wow, that sucks. I don't want that. And so, but a gradual realization over a few years, I realized that, it might be in my best interest to, cut all this stuff out and just see what happens as an experiment. Because that's what I believe that our entire lives are at the end of the day. It's just one big experiment where we try a bunch of things that some of them work, some of them don't work, and we either pay for it or we benefit from it. And so what I found out is that when I decided to give up animal products altogether, I'm talking meat, chicken, dairy, fucking fish eggs, whatever it is, like I don't even drink the orange juice that they fortify with the fish eggs, you know what I mean? And I found out that like through experience, things changed drastically within me on every level. So the first thing I noticed was I was actually playing basketball with this guy, one of my best friends, Sonny, and I rolled my ankle of like doing like some stupid shit. I was playing basketball on like the lowest of low tops. It was like the dumbest decision ever. And I like rolled over it and I couldn't walk. I had to have them carry me home. I'm like hobbling on back home. This is when I was freshly vegan. And I'm like, oh man, I can't even walk. This sucks. This is gonna be brutal. And I rolled my ankle before, even in wrestling. I remember I like barely sprained it and I was out for 2 months my senior year to rehab an ankle. This was when I was 20, not even 20, I was what, 18, 19? 17, yeah. So then, lo and behold, I'm 26, playing basketball with my buddies, and I sprain my ankle, I can't walk. I wake up the next day and I could do jumping jacks. So that was like the first weird thing that kind of stood out to me. I'm like, this is a little strange. And I started researching more and more into it, and I found out that the healing process is essentially a de-inflammatory process. So everything starts in the body. Every ailment starts as a localized inflammation somewhere, and then disease is just when that gets taken out of like kind of spirals out of control. So what I realized is that plant-based diets are inherently anti-inflammatory, especially ones that are like really raw and based on like fruits and stuff like that. And that's what I realized was happening, is that my body's ability to heal itself was increasing. So that was pretty exciting because I was getting older at this point. I'm on the other side of 25, and yet I'm healing faster than I was when I was under 20. So that was interesting. And there was all sorts of additional things. Mental clarity came through. I felt like my intuition grew. There were all these sorts of ancillary things that I started noticing. So I was like, all right, yeah, veganism is the way, you know what I mean? If you're vegan, everything's fine. So that was well, and I agree with that in the karmic sense, that, if you're vegan, you're not going to really cause too much karmic trauma that ultimately you're gonna have to pay for. But then I had another thing happen to me that kind of really threw me off, that was really annoying. So at this point, I'd already become an athlete again. Like I was on this whole new level that I was training jiu-jitsu, competing in fights and stuff like that, and I had my mixed martial arts amateur debut. And 2 weeks out, I was a little sick, I had some mucus, and I had like a cold sore on my mouth. Now for anybody who knows, that's actually herpes. That's HVS1, yeah. I would say, so it says like 80% of the room has it, so I think you two are the only ones who don't have it. Everybody on the side of the couch is herped up.
No, I got it, I'm sorry. But just the mouth.
Yeah, just the mouth, HVS1. And I mean, we can get into how crazy that thing is and what the fuck viruses even are, because what threw me off, I'm like, well, how do you fix this? And the doc that I went to was like, well, it's not like bacteria, you can't just kill it. It's actually much like a computer virus. It programs your cells to misbehave, essentially. And I was like, wow, that's fucking scary. It's technically inorganic, so that's horrifying that an inorganic, like, I don't know, entity, I don't know the technical term for it, can reprogram your body to make like painful cold sores on your mouth and wherever the fuck else you might get them. So I was training once and I got a small cut on my arm, and I guess I must have wiped the cold sore on my arm and the virus spread to my arm. Yeah, it was brutal. This is 2 weeks before I have to go in front of an athletic commission and get checked for any sort of like, contagious diseases because I'm about to fight somebody. So I'm in this huge pickle. I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? So I literally come home. The first one I thought was just a pimple, and then more and more came. They kept growing, and it actually went all the way across my arm, this arm right here. So you can all take a look at it now and see that it's no longer there. And in fact, there's not even a remnant of it. So what had happened was I researched into what the cause of that stuff was. I researched more into diet, and I found out that how herpes subsists in the body is through binding to inorganic minerals that are lodged in the system. And that could be any part of the system. And so in order to accurately cure it and to put it into remission, you simply have to remove all of the inorganic minerals or acidic minerals. So that's a whole nother topic that I'm about to get into. So essentially what I found out is that there's a balance in the interstitial fluids between acid and alkaline. You might have learned this in like school, like pH. Like who here has a pool? Does anybody have a pool at home? You know, you got to keep it. You got to test the pH of it and make sure. Yeah, because if the pH gets too low, essentially what happens is it becomes a breeding ground for bacteria, yeast, fungus, and all these things that thrive in those types of environments. And that's really good for them. But if that's the condition of your interstitial fluids and the 65% water you're made up of, that's not good for you, because now you have viruses and bacteria that are thriving inside of your body. So what I found is that it's fairly simple to change the body system from an acid state to an alkaline state, and it has mostly to do with not what you eat, but what you don't eat. Because what you eat will sustain you, but what you don't eat, your body has to get rid of. And that's a very long and arduous process. So I realized that what the herpes was thriving off of, even though I was vegan, was actually gluten. Because gluten is a starch just like any of these other starches that you find in, like, you know, really starchy vegetables, or like, for example, they turn into what's called carbonic acid, which is an acid that deteriorates the body, and meat turns into another acid that isn't carbonic acid, but it's like a more organic version, and it does the same effect. It lowers the pH. So what I did was I cut off all gluten, and I immediately from that day on fasted for 6 days straight. Nothing but juice, nothing but fruit juice and cilantro and parsley juice, because I had found a researcher named Dr. Robert Morse who was bragging about how easy it was to cure all of these diseases. Oh yeah, I cured herpes, I cured AIDS, I cured all this stuff. And there were other researchers who claimed to do that stuff, but his methodology was through nothing but a fruit cleanse. He said if you have a disease, especially a viral, AIDS, any of that stuff, it's curable through a fruit cleanse. And the way this works is fruits themselves, they have 3 properties that make them able to do this. One is their astringentness. So an astringent liquid is just something that causes a contraction to any sort of like fibers that it comes in contact with. So a remedial example of this would be cold water. That's why you wash your laundry cold when blood comes in it, because the cold water causes an astringent. It's almost like, think of it like, you know, wringing the rag. That's essentially what these juices do to your organs and to what's stuck on your organs, whether it's residue from the food that you've eaten or from shit that got sprayed on you. There's a whole list of crap that gets entered in our system. Some things we have control over, some things we don't. Plastics, yeah, all of that stuff. Any inorganic material. The drugs, yeah, the drugs we do eat, whether wittingly or unwittingly, because there's drugs and a lot of shit that we don't even realize. So all this stuff gets like trapped in here, and over like 25 years of being alive and doing this stuff, you start to build up like packages. Essentially, it's constipation of the pipes of your body. And that could be true constipation, like colon constipation, which we're all familiar with, but it could be something as interesting as constipation of the veins. The idea of cholesterol and all that stuff, what it really is just mucoid plaque that is a response to the acidosis of the body. Your body produces mucus to try and soothe these acid areas, because if it doesn't, you'll die. When you acidize your body, your blood, which has to be at a certain pH, if it is not kept at that pH, you will die. So as soon as that shit goes in, your body figures out, okay, what is this, and is it gonna kill me? And if it does kill you, it takes everything it can out of its own resources to remove that shit and put it in your sewer system. Now, who here remembers learning about all the systems of the body? Cardiovascular system, skeletal system. Do you remember those lessons in like middle school? Anybody? Yeah, nobody remembers that shit because they really taught it to you once and then you never got heard of it again. There was a system in there, the endocrine system and all that. There was a system in there that I was taught that they didn't even touch. Like, you know, they were like, cardiovascular is important, skeleton, like, you know, you gotta be healthy, drink milk, which is a lie. But the lymphatic system was one that, like, it sounds all complicated. I'm like, well, what's that? And the teacher's like, I don't know, I don't know. Just study what's in the book. So years later, I find out that the lymphatic system is the sewer system. The lymphatic system is basically where your white blood cells come from. And if you've ever gutted a shrimp, it's that gross, basically thing that you have to pull off before you can serve the shrimp. And I know it's an interesting analogy to make in a vegan talk, but the idea is to get you to understand that you have like a series of pipes that is your out. It's all the bad shit gets pulled out of all of the good shit and has to go somewhere. Ultimately, your body tries to get rid of it through your urine, through your colon, or through sweating, or through purging. But sometimes if you eat too much, more than the body can purge, you're gonna get it back up, and that's no good. That's what disease comes from. So basically, the idea here is you can liberate yourself from any physical ailment at all. I'm talking from arthritis to dementia to anything, because all that is localized acidosis. Dementia is acidosis of the mind, bronchitis is acidosis of the lungs, smokers. So when you smoke cigarettes, all you're doing is inhaling like ridiculously toxic acids that do the same thing that the foods do to your interstitial fluids, except to your lungs. So it's the same situation. And ironically, it's almost like divine that we are given the gifts to cure all this stuff, because I was pretty heartbroken. Like, I didn't know if I was gonna be able to fight, and then even if I did fight, I had fucking herpes. Like, I didn't want to have herpes. You know what I mean? Like, I like women and stuff, and I like hugging people. Like, I felt like a leper. You know what I mean? I was like walking around. I had like this band. It was awful. The psychological damage that the physical disease can do to you is like, is brutal. And so, lo and behold, I fasted for 6 days. Fasting puts your body in a natural alkaline state because your body begins to oxidize, and oxygen is alkaline. So, believe it or not, you can actually alkalize yourself through conscious breathing. There was a guy who showed me a technique. It's like, and if you do this like 30 times, you can actually pump like oxygen into your brain and into your blood. Pilots actually do this who fly like Mach something planes. They actually have to do that because of like pressure systems and stuff like that. But you can do it sitting down and actually hyperalkalize your body. So the idea is, if you maintain an alkaline pH, you not only are resistant to all disease, but you create an environment within the body that disease cannot live in. It would be akin to like putting a snail in a pile of salt. The snail cannot survive in that. Do you know what I mean? So like that's what we aim to do here is basically like, if we want this sort of liberation from physical disease, then the only true way to do that is to change our decisions and to change our actions. Because essentially, and I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I believe that the physical disease we harbor from eating these foods is actually our karma that we are served for the stealing and the theft that happens. So like, think about it simply as possible. What is the only thing that you can eat that nature gives to you? Like actually like hands over to you, like wants you to take it? Fruits. That's it. Well, veggies to an extent, but you still, like some vegetables, you still have to rip them up. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that, you know, you're a bad person if you eat vegetables. That's not what we're getting at. But we're talking about on the scale of karmaless foods to like large, bad karmic debt foods. The ones at the very top of the karmaless pyramid are fruits, because they are literally gifts. They're the reproductive organs of the plant. They fall off the tree when ripe. You don't even have to touch them. You're just walking around in the tropics and there's like a coconut and you're like, oh. It's like literally a gift. And a gift is a synonym for a fruit. So it's almost like even in language, this sort of idea is embedded. And so if you just actually subsist off fruits, which I've been pretty much doing, I did it for 6 months when I got the virus, completely took care of it. I mean, I don't even have to shower anymore. I have no outbreaks, nothing. I'm in a completely alkaline environment. I have strength, my breath doesn't smell, my bones are super strong. Like, it's all these weird things that you would never expect. I walked into a wall yesterday. Like, I literally walked into it. My sister was there. She couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. There's like this wall that cuts off, boom, smoked me. Smoked me right in the side of the skull, and it didn't hurt. I'm not even kidding you. Like, I walked into a concrete wall with my head, and I was fine. And I mean, like, this has come from the guy who, when he was 17, rolled his ankle in wrestling and was out for 2 months. So what I realized is that when you eat dairy and stuff like that, the intense amount of acidosis that happens, your body will counteract that. Now, this is where it gets ironic, by pulling calcium from your bones to alkalize the acid environment. So all that shit about milks makes your bones strong. What it actually does is it fucking burns through them like acid, and your body is forced to take extra calcium from other areas that aren't hurt and feed it to that area. And that's where osteoporosis comes from. You know what I mean? Heart disease, constipation of the blood vessels or arteries. That's all this stuff is. And even like nerve damage and stuff. So let's get into that. Let's get into like the nervous system and the less like physical. And now we're starting to move into the more like, I guess like, I don't want to say metaphysical, but let's just say immaterial. So like, what is the nervous system? It's like this crazy like fucking like, it's basically like a kind of like a computer in a way, that processes electrical signals that somehow we interpret as our experience. So like people who have pinched nerves and stuff like that, or who have like, you know, tightness and all this like weird like neurological disorders, believe it or not, that has to do with you slowing down the electric flow of information in your nervous system. And this brings me to the second and most important part of the fruits things. We understand the acid-alkaline balance, which is crucial, but now we have to take it a step further and understand the electrolysis of this situation. So if anybody saw the video that State of Anarchy put out about the Tesla regeneration device, it basically reveals how humans are electrical beings, how the entire function of our anatomy depends solely on the electromagnetic fields produced by the heart and brain and the electromagnetic signals sent by the heart and brain to the various organs, muscles, whatever, what have you, and that's how you human. You know what I mean? That's how you dance, that's how you do martial arts. It's all electric signals that are flowing. And what we find is that most meats, most cooked foods, most heavily dense foods, if you stick a wire in them, or if you do what's called Kirlian photography, where you can actually measure the angstroms radiating from these foods are dead when it comes to electric potential. These foods are very low in electricity. Now, if you take 4 key limes and literally just put some copper wire or any conductive material in the limes and attach it to a light bulb, the light bulb will turn on because there's a latent electricity in these fruits and these key limes. So what we, literally from that experiment, what we can see is that these fruits are alive and they are producing electricity. And that if we eat them, we gain that electricity. So how batteries work is it's just a fucking bucket of liquid, and the liquid changes depending on if it's industrial batteries or if you're a smart guy and you know how to do it out of salt water. But you add something to the water and the electricity travels through the water from one anode to the cathode, or maybe it's the reverse, but from one pole to another. And that is how you transmit electricity from a battery to a machine. It's the same way with you. You are a battery. You are a sack of fluid that is electrified, that has basically a voltage. And if your voltage is low, just like on the DJ Osmo stabilizer that you don't even realize is shooting this, if the voltage is low, the stabilizer wouldn't work. It's the same exact thing with humans. If your voltage is low, your mind, your nervous system, your heart, all that stuff can't send the signals that it needs and can't perform the mechanical and electric work that it has to do to heal you. So by going on an all-fruit diet, 1, you eliminate all mucus-causing foods. 2, you actually help remove mucus that's already in the body through the astringent and the solvent nature of the fruits. And 3, you hyper-turbo electrify your system to the point where you're actually glowing with energy. And what I realized is if I spent an entire day eating all fruits, every single time I would eat, I would get more energy, and it was lasting energy. It wasn't like a hit, like a stimulant, you know what I mean? A big meal and then you're hype, and then like an hour later it's like, oh my God, my fucking belly, I gotta go to bed. But no, in this case, no, as I eat and I eat and I eat grapefruit after grapefruit after grapefruit, I'm waiting for the diabetes, but all I get is infinite energy and abundance and sort of like this almost sense of well-being. And then I'll close the talk with one last element that can't be forgotten, and this is now we're gonna bring it fully metaphysical. We started in the physical with the acid alkaline, then we sort of translated to immaterial with, you know, how electricity is connected to the body. Now we're gonna take it all the way out into hippy dippy land and talk about the spiritual implications of veganism and not veganism. So, what sells me and what really upsets me is, 1, it's hard enough to bear the pain that the animals go through to get them born and then killed and then turned into whatever it is that we want to eat. But think about this for a second. The state that something dies in is like the energetic imprint that is left upon its flesh. So if you have a cow or whatever animal it is, whatever living being it is, if it is in a horrified state of torture, its adrenal glands are pumping nothing but like insane adrenals into the flesh. Not only that, but there is a spiritual vibration. Consider it like an energetic signature that is imprinted onto the meat or onto the dairy. And that signal is torturous. That signal is negative. That signal is like suffering and death. So essentially what happens when you eat that stuff is you not just electrically aren't putting anything electric in your body, but from a spiritual perspective, you are consuming something that has the energy of torture and death on it. So you're consuming torture and death and you're bringing that inside of you. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people who eat a heavy protein diet or who eat like just a lot of that type of food, they aren't happy. I mean, I'm not saying that this is across the board, but if you ever see a guy who's really overweight, he isn't like strutting around like really happy to be overweight, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, like guys like that will like play with it, you know what I mean? They're like, well, I'm already fat, so I better do something about it. I better be like at least funny about this, or else, you know what I mean? Then I'm just gonna have to realize that I'm unhealthy and I'm ruining my body. But like, to be honest, like, that's what they're feeling, in my opinion. I don't think they really are upset that they're fat. I think they're upset that they have this energetic signature inside of them that is nothing but suffering. And that, to me, is what they're really feeling. And that's what I no longer feel. I no longer feel that. I feel the energy of the gift of the universe. Like, when you accept a gift from somebody who loves you, it feels good. You know what I mean? It's like a positive transaction. Both people feel good. So, like, when you accept a gift from nature, nature is happy to give you that gift, and your body is happy to receive it on a spiritual level. So everything inside of you is that like, almost like divinity. That is the purity of nature. And for any we'll just clear this up, because everybody says this shit, and I want to touch on this. People are like, if you eat nothing but fruit, you're gonna eat too much sugar and you're gonna become a diabetic. And these people have no, I mean, like, I'm not like my background's in engineering, so I'm not gonna get all orgo on you and do organic chemistry and stuff. But what I will say is that, yes, sugar in its refined form is awful. It's an addiction. Complex sugars and starches, bad for you. Gluten, all that stuff. We already went over that. That's what the virus was thriving on. But base fructose is base chemistry. It is the simplest, most natural sugar that exists, and it is 100% organic. And it is actually the body's primary fuel. For anybody into like the keto diet, the idea behind keto is you have to kill all of your sugar to start up ketosis, which is essentially your body feeding off of fat because there's no sugar left. But it doesn't make much sense to me, because if the body wanted you to run off fat, that's what it would burn first. I mean, that's just how I look at it. Like, if the body is designed to run on sugar first, if that's the body's first choice, then there's probably a reason for that. And well, I didn't decide that. You know, I wasn't like, oh, I want to run off sugar first. You know what I mean? That's just how, like, humans are designed. So I don't think there's anything wrong with fructose. I don't think there's anything wrong with fat either. I'm not polarizing that debate. But there's fat in fruits if you want fat. You know what I mean? Just eat a bunch of avocados if you're a keto head. You know what I mean? It's the same effect. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that for any of the medics who might be, you know, concerned about diabetes. And one last thing. This whole process that I've described to you is a continuous process that's happening even to you right now, even if you're not vegan, and even if you're just sitting here. It's called regenerative detoxification. It is just basically your body constantly trying to function at maximum efficiency. That's all it is. And what our job is, if we want to be healthy, is to just help it along in that process. If we can take the blocks out of the way, and then if we can give it lots of juice, lots of positive energy, lots of ions, lots of astringentness, clean it out, get it nice and, it's like cleaning your car, you know what I mean? It's like perfect, shiny, oil change, everything, under the hood, on top of the hood. And then your skin starts shining, your emotions start flowing, you don't need sleep, you can train MMA 3 hours on an empty stomach because you have so much electricity left over from all the food you've been eating this year that you could go 6 days without food and be fine. And that happens after the purge, because you can't go from standard American diet to fruitarian overnight. I didn't, and I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that. The amount of detoxification that you can get hit with in that rapid of a change could honestly kill you, depending on how far bad you are. So the idea behind this is a gradual moving into sort of like just less of the bad shit and more of the good shit. You know what I mean? You don't have to go extreme. It's not a religion. I hate when people even use the word vegan, because it's become such a cult in everyone's mind that, like, as soon as you say it, people just run the other way. Sometimes even if they're vegan, just because like they hate the polarizing like effect it has on communities, even in the truth community. So instead of saying be vegan because it's right, or be vegan because it's healthy, or be vegan for the animals, I just would rather sort of try to sell it to you in a way that, like, hey, look, you came here for a good time, you came here for some reason, and all I'm trying to do is give you the information you need so you could just get a taste of the fruits of life. So thanks, guys, I appreciate it. And we got time for questions if anybody wants to ask anything.
Yeah, I got some questions.
What do you got?
I heard we get a free mango.
Yo, I will give you that free mango tomorrow. I literally was trying to bring free fruit here, but the way it worked out, oh, I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. Sorry, Sasha. What's your question, man?
A few questions. So, like, now, like, what about like cucumbers, tomatoes? Those are fruits.
Fruits, yeah. Anything with a seed is a fruit. It's a reproductive organ of the plant. So if it has a seed, that means for the tree or whatever the base plant was made it so that when that falls on the ground and then ends up in the soil, whether it just decays there or whether you eat it and fertilize it, it creates more life. So it's in line with that sort of like, you know, the continuation of the life force. The continuation of, okay, you know, it's almost like as we eat fruits and we spread their seed, we are returning the favor for the gift that we're given. So yeah, all that stuff's fruit. If it has a seed, it's a fruit.
Okay. And what about nuts and seeds?
So yeah, nuts and seeds. They're carmeless foods in the sense that, like, you're not, you know, I don't think there's any evil in eating them. I personally still eat some nuts and seeds sometimes. I find that they are heavier on the digestive system. Like if I go a day with all fruits, you know, I'm flying around. But if I go a day and I eat some nuts, I definitely am not as energetic. You know what I mean? I like them, I think they're good, and I wouldn't say that they would kill you, especially if that's the only other thing you eat besides fruit. And like I said, man, if you're asking these questions because you're thinking about transitioning, dude, you know what I mean? If you still have to eat seafood to get there, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not one of those vegans who like castrates people for not being able to do it overnight. I didn't do it overnight, so I have no position to tell other people to do that. But yeah, just phase things out. And if you stay with fruits and nuts and you don't want to give up nuts, don't give up nuts, you know what I mean? That's your sovereign decision, because, you know, the nuts in a way are gifts from the trees too. I believe that nuts are a function of reproduction as well. Don't quote me on that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. It falls off the tree, it ends up in the ground, and then some other shit grows. Right. So yeah, does that answer your question? You have anything else?
So if I was to eat meat, what about like grass-fed? That's probably less bad anyway. On
a karmic scale, technically, yeah. So it's like, I mean, it's less bad than the meat that's tortured, but at the end of the day, like, murdering something is always a form of torture. Like, nothing ever asks to get murdered. And if it does, usually it'll just take care of it itself. Do you know what I mean? If you get that far. But once you cross that line where, like, you know, especially an animal like a cow or something like that, like, they don't have the mental capacity to have like an intelligent discussion about with you and negotiate the terms of their life. How it works is you show up to their, you know, barn or stable or wherever you live, you beat them over the head, or you electrocute them with a rod, whatever it is. Even the local farmers who grass feed them still have to brutally murder them. There's not like an easy way to kill shit, you know what I mean? Even if you shoot them, like, there's still like the dying process. And in that moment, all the adrenaline comes out, all those nasty chemicals come out, and that gets infused in the flesh. So yeah, maybe it's definitely less pain than something that was born in literally a torture chamber, grew up there for like 3 weeks and then was murdered. That's dead. But by that same token, you're not gonna cure herpes that way. Now, I'm not saying you have herpes, but you know what I'm getting at.
No,
yeah.
He definitely has herpes. Because last night when we were at his house, he said, listen.
Yeah.
And actually, Sasha was telling me, this is interesting. So I actually kind of want to touch on one more thing that kind of fits in with all this, and that's fasting. So that was the crucial thing that I feel like really does the trick. And Sasha was telling me that he turned me on to dry fasting, because I was into juice fasting, which is what I did to cleanse and stuff, because they say that also viruses will hold on to heavy metals, and apparently like herbs like cilantro and parsley, if you juice them, they have like really, really, really good electromagnetic properties. They like suck all that aluminum right out of you. So I was juicing it and stuff like that. But then I saw Sasha on Jeff Burrick's thing. He's like, yeah, do I like dry fast all the time? And I'm like, how do you not die from dehydration? And then he said something about like, it's called deep water. Is that like the technical term? So, and it makes sense, because you are like I think it's like anywhere from 96% to 80% water. And the idea is your body is naturally filtering that and distilling that over and over again. So when you need hydration and you're dry fasting, your body will take from this distilled water, which is actually the purest form of water, and hydrate you that way. And it does it all without activating the digestive system. So again, this is a function of energy and how much you have to spend. If you eat, it costs energy, because all your organs got a lot of work to do, all right? There's a whole bunch of shit that's got to get done. It's got to go from your mouth to your stomach, then your stomach's got to digest it, then it goes into here, and then it goes in your colon, and then, you know what I mean? There's all sorts of stuff that's going on. But if you spend an elongated period of time where that shit's just at rest, it's akin to when you meditate and your mind is at rest. Your body then devotes that energy into healing it.
It's so huge. You just stick to fruit or prana, anything light, even vegetables, just light stuff.
Yeah.
Your body processes it so fast. I sleep. Like when I go and eat a meal, like a nice big juicy meal, I'm gonna sleep 8 hours, 9 hours. When I'm just eating fruits and super light stuff, 5.
Yeah.
6. And sometimes I wake up after 4 hours and I'm so alert, I'm like, I gotta get up.
Yeah.
4 hours. Do you know how much extra life you have when you're living a lifestyle where you need 4 to 6 hours sleep instead of 8? You can learn.
I can't wake up past
so
7.
much stuff. It's insane. You can learn new languages. You can learn kung fu, anything you want. We don't need 8 hours of sleep. We need 8 hours of sleep because you got all this shit in your gut, and you're eating at 10 p.m. and you gotta process all this. That's why you just don't spend the energy on this.
Yep. He's 100% spot on. That's exactly right. And he was actually telling me that apparently, and it's funny because I actually saw somebody else who's coming out and being public about just straight up dry fasting, like continuously, like without eating. Sasha was telling me that's the key to infinite life. Now that's taking it a stretch, but I will be happy to do that experiment. Because I'm a goddamn scientist, all right? I don't believe anything anybody tells me. I just listen to it and then try it and see if it works. And so far, everything I've tried on this path has just been nothing but helpful for me. Like you said,
continuous dry fasting, that would be no food, no water forever. There are, I think, only 2 people in the whole world that are breatharians who have quit water, and it's because they live in a climate that's quite wet. and humid, and they suck in water through their skin. But all the other breatharians, they just drink water, and some of them eat a little fruit or whatever. You know, it's conic living, so there's various degrees. But my teacher went 1 year without any food, just water, and he goes to the gym and he's ripped. So you can do a process where you take your energy from the universe. And I'm telling you, that's epic. Your consciousness goes up so much. Yep. You're not using any energy on this. It's crazy.
Yes, it does.
Totally
He's 100% right. That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. Damn, thank you for coming to this talk, bro. You got my fucking back, Sasha. I love it.
For real.
Yeah.
I've heard like meat has like B12 or certain things.
Oh yeah, so the vitamin B12 myth. All right, so
here we go.
Yeah, I know this crazy thing. It's like, oh my God, there's this one name thing that I can't pronounce, that if I don't get it, I'm gonna die. I haven't taken vitamin B12 supplements since I went vegan. It hasn't affected me. I've looked into it. B12 is I think it's a bacteria or something, and it's not like meat naturally contains it and plants don't. It's just that it usually ends up on meat, and actually in factory farms they now add it, like they straight up like add it, like they inject it into the meat.
90% of the B12 that is produced is for animals.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the reason why animals have B12 is because we're making a bunch of it and stuffing them up with it, and then telling people that's the only place to get it. When in reality, it used to come from just like the bacteria that would be on like the mango that was sitting on the dirt. You know what I mean? You would just be some human frugivore walking by. And so yeah. And how many people have studied the digestive system? How many people know? How many people have compared, like, let's say your mouth or like your organs to like that of like a tiger? Does anybody?
I've seen some memes on that.
Yeah.
Where like our teeth are the most like chimpanzees, I think.
Yeah, exactly. If you compare our like anatomy from digestive system to the teeth to even what's on your hands, like we don't have claws, you know what I mean?
I have.
But it's interesting, like, and then when I started eating fruit, I realized how ridiculously designed we were for it. It literally just is like this pod, and it just like goes right there. Like if I gave this pod to my cat, he wouldn't, you know what I mean? He just got paws, it would just fall out of his little hands. But if I give a piece of raw chicken to my cat, he will devour it, bone and all. And that's another thing I'll say to like the carnist people who are like, you know, we need meat to survive. I'm like, well then why do you cook it? Why do you spice it? You know what I mean? If it is really your natural diet, then why do you have to make all these obligations? Why can't you eat it raw? And then you have the crazy people who actually will eat meat raw, and God bless their souls, Jesus Christ.
Actually, I got a friend who was friends with one of these raw food gurus.
Yeah.
Called Vanderplatz, and he healed thousands of people with disease, and raw organic meat, like really, really high.
The carnivore diet?
Eating raw eggs, raw milk, that shit cures, man.
Interesting.
I have a friend who was dying.
Yeah?
She just cured, yeah.
Wow.
It's a totally different path, but raw organic, I've had organic steak raw, I felt amazing. I was doing cartwheels.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was like drugs.
Yeah, well, that's funny that you say like drugs. That's very funny that you say it's like drugs, because I found that like in my research, they classify meat as almost like a stimulant. You know what I mean? So that's another issue. Like a lot of people, like even in my gym, I train martial arts with a bunch of like meatheads, and they're all like fucking, you know, crazy ruffians. And I got this one little crazy Spanish dude freaks out. He's like, you know, man, I gotta eat meat because it makes me feel badass, makes me feel strong and shit. And like what I would say is that's a combination of the adrenals that you're absorbing from the animal and the whatchamacallit, not the energy that you're feeling, the stimulant nature of the actual meat itself. Now, as far as the carnivore diet, I do see merit in it, in that of the things that carnivores don't eat. So I think that a lot of the benefits of that diet is getting off grains, getting off all that other stuff. Now, I have not tried the raw diet. Frankly, I'm always like a first principle kind of guy. So like if I put like a piece of raw chicken up to my face and smell it, it smells absolutely disgusting. Yeah, I don't know if anybody here would eat raw meat. I mean, that's a tough one. Even when I was a carnivore, I wouldn't do that. And I mean, even my like parents and stuff, like, you know, my dad will make a joke. I'm like, well, if you want a piece of raw meat, you know, nobody will touch that stuff.
Better than cooking it.
It's definitely better than cooking it. I agree with that. Because cooking actually is just a process that destroys all foods, regardless of what it is. If you cook vegetables, you actually take away that heat, breaks them down, and destroys all the hydration. And again, that kills the electrolysis and the electric potential of the food. So that's actually what we want to keep in mind here. We're eating electricity. We're eating data. We're not eating nutrients.
Somebody said this, but I don't know if it's true, that there are certain things where you cook them and they become edible and actually better for you. Like
interesting. Well, I would say like beans, yeah. So like you can't like eat like chickpeas raw. Right. But I mean, some people, but you don't even really have to cook them. You just have to hydrate them. So people will boil them to accelerate the hydration process, but you can actually just leave them in water overnight and they'll just get saturated. So yeah, so like, but then again, we're talking about if we want to go to the max here and be fruitarians, you would take beans off the menu because they have starch in them, and starch will eventually turn to carbonic acid, and this just lowers the pH, and we get back in that same cycle. All disease is just mucus and acidosis, and it's just localized. And then what happens is once an organ fails, due to acidosis, then it's just a chain reaction of all this other shit, you know, crapping out. But between fasting and between eating fruits and vegetables and exercising and meditation and all these things that just raise your electromagnetic spiritual frequency, you can really cure any disease, whether it's mental, physical, or spiritual, by just simply enjoying the fruits of life. That's the simplest part of this whole
You gotta
thing.
use the word reverse, otherwise you can go to jail.
Yeah!
Reverse disease.
Can we touch on that? Can we touch on how you can go to jail? It doesn't matter if you cure them. You can cure them. You can show up to jail with the fucking medical affidavit that says you cured them, but you go to jail because there's some sort of like weird rule that you can't use that word. Now, what kind of a fucked up society do we live in that if you actually do something like cure a disease, you aren't allowed to say that? That's why your doctor always calls it treatment. It's not a cure, it's treatment, managing. So yeah, that's fucking BS. I'm sorry for saying cure. Please don't send me to jail. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to expat to Mexico. Don't tell anybody I said it.
Ran you out.
What do you got?
You talked about pH level. Like I heard, lemon is good for your for your gut. Isn't lemon like very
Acid, yes. So there's a difference here between what a substance's pH is outside of the body and then what happens when it enters the body and merges with it. So yeah, if you take like a little pH thing and hit your lemon or your lime, they're called acid fruits because they actually do have very low pHs. But what happens is once they combine with the fluids in your body, the chemistry that results is an alkaline chemistry. Whereas when you eat meat, the chemistry that results is an acid chemistry. So you have to think you're running it sort of like through a buffer. It's fusing with you and then the outcome must be alkaline, not necessarily what goes in. So that's how that works. You can look more into that. I mean, that's a public thing. Everybody that's like, even scientists will acknowledge that lemons and all that stuff have an alkalizing effect on the body. It's just how it mixes with your chemistry. And so that's basically what you want to be aware of. You want to think, what am I made of? Like, what do my teeth look like? What do my intestines look like? How do I feel when I eat things? Use that as a gauge. I started realizing that I felt less bloated when I was eating vegan, when I was eating fruit-based, and I would just be able to be quicker on my feet, less like bogged down, sort of like sluggishness, and just more energy. So that's all I offer here, more energy, and all you gotta do is enjoy the fruits of life. Any other questions?
Will you be my boyfriend?
Only if you let me do a jiu-jitsu seminar at the Infinite Man Summit. Then I will date you for eternity, all right? I'll even catch.
Join the State of Anarchy this September's Harvest Moon in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where this gathering of like minds aims to foster unbreakable relationships between the movement's leading forces, whom teach self-love and ownership, blockchain techno-economics, as well as exposing the Earth's sacred hidden knowledge. So will we see you there?